Everybody, it's Stef Mischook with Killer PHP and all the other stuff, all the other sites. In this quick little video blog, I wanted to talk about web frameworks in general, not just PHP web frameworks, but Ruby web frameworks and so on. Because in a recent video blog post on YouTube, there's a couple comments with regards to web frameworks, which ones to learn, should you make your own, yada, 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 yada. And one thing I wanted to bring up is that I think that the idea of a monolithic framework, one framework that you would use, like Zen, where Zen would do all their own stuff, or Laravel, they would do all their own stuff. What do I mean by stuff? I mean layers of code. So instead of having Zen, where they would have their own JavaScript layer and their own ORM layer and so on, what the more advanced frameworks are doing, Laravel is doing it now, and I know Ruby has been doing it for a little while now, is that what they'll do is they'll have a very loose framework where they will utilize other open source components and integrate that inside of their framework. So the framework becomes more of a spec, if you will. So for example, I have my Killer PHP blog open to a little I guess we'll call it an interview with a friend of mine who's a developer, and we were talking about web frameworks and so on. And he cited this. This was written in 2012, and he talked about how Rails was, for instance, they took out their JavaScript layer and they replaced it with jQuery, and they took out their own ORM and replaced it with something called RL, which I never heard of, but I'm sure it's pretty good, so on and so forth. So I think that's where it's going. I think the frameworks are going to become much more loose that way, and that's better because then you can swap in and out of components in and out of the frameworks. So when you, as I've always said for years and years, when you're looking at any technologies, whether it be within PHP, outside of PHP, whatever, don't become married to the technology. Learn that the principles and the basic concepts and design patterns are what is important, because you're going to have different implementations, different examples of that at some point. So for instance, just recently, last few years, CodeIgniter used to be pretty big and very popular, but because of mistakes they made, they've pretty much they're disappearing very quickly, and other frameworks like Laravel in the PHP world is taking their thunder. But yeah, so this can change again, I'm sure, as things progress, as the web community becomes more mature. On the client side, in the JavaScript world, I remember a few years ago, Scriptaculous, you probably never heard of it, was very popular. And it died, hasn't been updated in 3-4 years, and jQuery took over. And who knows what will take over from jQuery, if anything. Maybe jQuery will maintain its dominance, I don't know. And that's about it. Ciao.